Why your infinite banking system. The topic of this presentation is why your infinite banking system. The reason why we started with the why is that we want you to understand why you want to change the paradigm that you've been living in. And we believe that if you understand why, then you're going to investigate it, be open to it, and change the way you've been doing your financial dealings. The importance of your infinite banking system. Cornelius Vanderbilt. We're going to start looking at two families. One is the Cornelius Vanderbilt family. We're going to talk about how they did it. And of course, they didn't know about IBC at the time, but they understood family finances. Cornelius was the Bill Gates of his time. This was the 1800s, and he had lots of wealth. In fact, he had a $105 million estate at the time, and that's quite a bit of money when you think back in the early 1800s. In 1973, 120 descendants from his family got together, and without looking at the slide, how many of those descendants do you think were millionaires? Well, the sad thing is that not one of them was a millionaire. All the wealth that Cornelius had built up had been all wasted or dissipated or gone from the family. One of the reasons is that all the money was transferred without responsibility or accountability. It just became a luxury. They never implemented a system that was effective and transferable. Think of people that you heard of or may know that at one time had all kinds of wealth and that they don't anymore. It has all been wasted. Think about lottery winners. You see someone wins the lottery and you think they have all the money they'll ever need, and then pretty soon they waste it and they're back in the breadline. Think about some athletes and movie stars.
These are generalizations.
But I'm sure you can relate to people that you've heard of or know that had it all and now are hurting financially. This is not a family model that you want to follow. Not the Vanderbilt family. Mayer Rothschild. The other family we want to talk about is the Mayer Rothschilds. This family was a banking dynasty. But it didn't happen by magic. He taught his 5 sons how to make conservative investments and how to manage money. They invested things that had reasonable profits. They weren't just going out for the latest and greatest, where they were going to get the biggest killing. They were very successful and developed a huge fortune. He created a system. It was not just random things happening. He had a method and had taught it to his sons. Their fortune grew and it passed on from generation to generation. They had annual meetings to make sure that they were really following the plan as it was laid out. Before Mayer would give money to his sons, they had to have a plan. They had to know what they were going to do with it. And he watched them. And if they didn't use it properly, he took it back from them. He controlled and disciplined them and had them develop their own system. Think about how you learned about money. What kind of system have you set up for you and your family? What did your parents teach you? So there are some lessons from that, either good or bad, that you can use as you get into the infinite banking concept. Where does your money go? The question is, where does your money go? Think about it. How do you spend your money from month to month? As you're thinking about this, also remember it's not the amount of money that you earn that determines whether you're wealthy or not. It is the amount of money that you end up keeping that determines your wealth. Think of some of the credit card ads where you see people that have beautiful homes and boats, airplanes, vacations, but they purchased it all on credit, and they are up to their neck in debt. They look like they are wealthy, but they don't have any money to their name. Think about where your money goes. Are you the person that has money because you have a system and you've been keeping it? Or is all your money coming in and going right out, either to creditors or you're just spending it? Understanding banking. This is a very important concept that you should know. Everything you purchase, you finance, because you either borrow the money and pay interest to somebody, a lending institution, a credit union, a bank, a credit card company, or you decide that you're going to pay cash and you give up the interest that someone else is paying you because that cash was in a bank or in some kind of investment earning interest. Either way, there is a cost. You either pay up or you give up. Consider the following. I'm going to pretend to be your banker, and you're going to be someone who is buying a car. I'm going to call you on the phone and would tell you, what I know about you, Mr. Smith, is that you have $30,000 in my bank, and it's earning 4%. It is a certificate of deposit, and I know you're thinking of cashing the certificate of deposit because you need $30,000 for your new car, and you want to pay cash. What I'm telling you is, leave the certificate of deposit in the bank earning 4% and borrow the $30,000 from me, your banker. I'm going to charge you 6% interest for 48 months. And my promise to you is that at the end of the 48 months, I would have paid you more interest on your certificate of deposit than you would have paid me on the car loan. I want you to think about this, Mr. Smith, and get back to me, and let me know what you want to do. And then I hang up. Question. The client is going to be charged 6% interest on the loan, and he's earning 4% in his certificate of deposit. So the question is, do you believe the banker? You come up with the answer, yes or no. In the next slide, we're going to show you if the banker was telling the truth. Comparison. Here's the answer. The bank loan is for $30,000 for 48 months at an interest rate of 6%, and the total interest paid was $3,818. The certificate of deposit was for $30,000 for 48 months at an earning ratio of 4%, and the total interest earned was $5,196. With the above interest rate and earning ratio, the banker was telling the truth. The certificate of deposit earns interest on an increasing value, while the bank loan pays interest on a decreasing value. Even when people have read Nelson's book, they still have a hard time believing that the banker is telling them the truth. No, it isn't a trick. Understanding interest. Albert Einstein said that those who understand interest are going to be the ones who earn it, and those who don't understand it are going to be the ones paying it. And that's where most people are. He also said the most powerful force in the universe is compound interest. We amplify that quote a little bit, yes. If it is compounding in a tax-free environment, that's true. When it is taxed, you lose some of that compounding effect because taxes take away from it. Losing the interest game. Are you losing the interest game? Did you know that interest consumes more of a typical American's earnings than anything else? Next, we are going through the example in Nelson's book on page 17. Annual pattern of spending. This diagram called the annual pattern of spending appears on page 17 of Nelson Nash's book, and it depicts expenditures of the typical all-American family. Nelson used a 29-year-old making $28,500 per year after taxes. How did he spend his money? 20% of his money was going into automobiles, 30% was going into housing, and 40% was going into living expenses. We had to use the last 10% for something, and Nelson said savings. However, the typical American is not saving 10%. Sometimes it's in the negative, and right now it's between 5 and 6%. Then Nelson did some other things with this. He took the amount of expenditures and determined what the volumes of interest were. In the automobile, it was between 11 to 25%. Housing was around 85%, and living expenses was approximately 11% for a total volume of interest of 34.5% for the typical all-American family. Consider the following. On pages 17 and 18 of Nelson Nash's book, he talks about the problem that the typical American family finances a house for 30 years, but sells it or refinances it after 5 years. It finances a car for 48 months, but it trades it in before it's paid off. Why is that a problem? What does selling or refinancing with a shorter period of time do to the volume of interest? Does it make it greater, or does it reduce it? It makes the volume of interest worse. When you think of the first payment on a loan, in month number 1, the majority of that payment is interest and very little of it is principal. So if you stop your home mortgage after 5 years, during the first 5 years, the majority of that money is going to be interest and very little of it principal. When you start the clock all over again, you keep having the volume of interest being bigger and bigger every time period. Same with the car. If you finance it for 48 months and you traded it in let's say 24 months, the volume of interest is going to be greater than if you went the whole 48 months. Example, home mortgage. Here's a $200,000 mortgage at 7% for 30 years. The monthly payments are $1,331. $79,836 is the total payments after 5 years, and $68,099 of it was interest. If we use the formula to calculate the volume of interest, you're going to find out that 85% of it was spent on interest. Example, automobile financing. Now, here on a car loan of $20,000 at 8.5% for 48 months, the monthly payments are $493. In 30 months, which is less than the time period that the loan was for, your total payment is $14,789. The interest is $3,092. And again, if you use your volume of interest formula, you're going to see that 21% was the volume of interest. That goes to show you that the typical American is really paying a lot more in volume of interest than they are in interest rate. Annual pattern of spending. Here we're stripping away the green that showed how much the typical American family spent on autos, housing, and living. We're going to concentrate on the red, which is the volume of interest, and we're going to balance that against the green savings. If you add up those 3 red bars, you're going to find out that the volume of interest is 34.5 cents on every dollar, and savings is 10 cents on every dollar. Here's a thought. 10 cents are going to savings, even though we said it was really closer to 5 or 6 cents for most American families. 34.5 cents are going to interest, and the question is, can you really get ahead if you're paying 34.5 cents in interest, and you're only saving 10 cents? And the answer should be no. Why? Most typically, you get a raise and pretty soon you just spend it. Think back into your life. Has that happened? Have you gotten a raise then found out you had less money the next month than you had the month before because your expenses not only rose to meet your income, they exceeded it? Playing with negative wind. We are illustrating a discussion that takes place in pages 17 and 18 of Nelson Nash's book. This is the example of the airplane in the weather system. CHI stands for Chicago, BHM stands for Birmingham, and MIA stands for Miami. H is the high. The white arrows show a way a high rotates clockwise. The 345 miles per hour represents the 34.5 cents of interest that is being spent, and we remove the decimal. The 100 miles an hour that the plane is flying represents the 10 cents that is being saved, with the decimal removed. The 10 becomes 100, and the 34.5 becomes 345. Right now, a headwind of 345 miles an hour is working against the plane, so it's really going backwards at 245 miles an hour. Is it ever going to get to Chicago? At that rate, no. The best advice is land. It's a weather system, so wait till it passes. Plane with no wind. Now the weather system has changed. It's now moved to where we have no wind. We're exactly neutral. So what we have is a 100 mile an hour plane speed, and 100 miles an hour represents how hard we are working. We haven't started working any harder. The only thing we have done is waited, and we don't have any interest payments. This represents the example that Larry Burkett and Dave Ramsey talk about, where you have no debt and you're spending everything in cash. When you really think about it, it's impossible to be in a no-debt situation. There are two examples we can come up with. One is when you're homeless and you owe nothing and you own nothing. The second is when you're in prison. We don't want either one of those, so we are going to go on and consider the next one. Plane with positive wind. Here the weather mass has moved on a little bit further to the east. Now the plane has a tailwind of 345 miles an hour, and the plane is being flown at 100 miles an hour. We have not changed our working at all. We're working at the same rate as we were working at the beginning. The only difference is now that we have interest working for us instead of against us. So at the beginning we had a negative 245 miles an hour the way we were getting towards Chicago, and now we're going at 445 miles an hour towards Chicago. That is a 690 miles an hour difference between those two. Controlling the financial environment. Although you cannot control the environment in which you fly, you can control the financial environment in which you operate by controlling the bank equation as it relates to you. Summary. Here are a few points from this particular presentation to make sure you remember. You finance everything that you purchase. You're either going to pay interest or you're going to give up interest. The other important point is the volume of interest that you're paying is more significant than the interest rate you're paying. Why your infinite banking system? Why do we want to do this in the first place? Why? Because we can, without changing how hard we work and without changing our cash flow, increase the volume of our wealth. Remember, wealth is measured by the amount of money we keep, not about the money that we spend. If we can show you this system that will not change your lifestyle, or how hard you are working, or how much you are spending on what, yet you're going to increase the volume of your wealth, wouldn't you want to pursue it further? We believe once you realize that is enough to help you break your paradigm and investigate this further. Designing infinite banking. Designing infinite banking systems isn't just one of the things we do, it's the thing we do. If you're ready to break your paradigm and investigate this further, please call us toll-free at 1-844-I-GET-IBC or contact us at infinitebankingsimplified.com.